It does seem like such a cliche to start by saying how honored and humbled I am to receive this award, but that's the truth, and it's how any of you would feel at a moment like this. Now, even more humbling is the challenge to share some wisdom in accepting the award, something that might actually be relevant to your own careers. So in search of wisdom, I came up with this conceit. What are 3 things I know today that I wish I had known much earlier? Some of you, by now, many of you, are probably aware that my wife and I now own a small horse farm in Kentucky. I'm not so bold as to compare myself to a giant historical figure, but I have to say, I now get Cincinnatus much better than any other time in my life. After his success in leading Roman armies in battle, the Romans wanted Cincinnatus to stick with the dictator gig. No thanks, he said. I'm good, going back to the farm. So, lesson 1 of a long career. Whatever the farm is in your life, there's always work you could be doing there. Keep that in mind when you're deciding what to do with your time and energy. Frankly, there were days in my career that I got through by telling myself, I don't have to do public relations for a living, I have other skills. Try that when you need to feel better about yourself sometime. Plus, there's always something to learn on your farm. In my case, it's starting a 45-year-old tractor sitting out in the barn. Now, I know there are some here in the room who know tractors. So I'll just say it's an Oliver 1800, and for everybody else, they stopped making that model in 1970. So I go out and try to start it, never mind that the gauges are covered with owl droppings. You can't tell what the gauges are, let alone if any of them still work. So, and then the beast roared to life, and exhaust stack just blew chunks of soot all over the barn and all over me. But nevertheless, I learned, especially from my upfront research on an inherently dangerous machine. Maybe this is another way of saying we in public relations and corporate communications tend to be people with options. What we do best is tackling what we haven't done before, confident that with research and critical analysis, we'll get it right. If we stick with that mindset as we approach new problems, the outcomes can be awesome. Lesson 2. Research is so much bigger than measurement, evaluation, and data analytics. I joined the Institute for Public Relations Board in 1994 and took the CEO role in 2004. Now, IPR is a nonprofit foundation dedicated to fostering greater use of research in our field, or as we say, as was said before, the science beneath the art of public relations. And we're supported by so many people in this room, and that's exactly what allows us to provide all of our research free on the website. So for 20 plus years, my time on this board, I've noted how the word research means so many different things to different people in our field. It's like each of us can have a definition all our own for it. And so it makes for interesting conversations. Now, sometimes it's just measurement evaluation and the fad term now, data analytics. I'm not saying that the collection and analysis of massive amounts of data isn't valid and here to stay. I'm just saying that if we made a drinking game based on how many times you hear the term in a public relations context, some of this room might be under the table already. So, in any case, to better define how we think about research, IPR began articulating 3 kinds of research in public relations, and this is adapted from Dr. Jim Grunig, who is also a previous recipient of this award. The 3 kinds are research used in public relations to guide and evaluate communications programs, research on public relations to understand what professionals do and how they do it, and research for public relations, which is the social science underpinnings of our work. Now, the first kind, in public relations, consists of planning, research, and measurement. This is how professionals align their work with organizational priorities, set meaningful objectives, execute, and measure. By measuring results against objectives, we're able to continuously improve our work and its contribution to organizational goals. Some of the knowledge we need for planning can be found in existing research, and some will require original research. The IPR Measurement Commission has published a wealth of important papers focused on this kind of research, and, as was mentioned earlier, the Coalition for Public Relations Research Standards, formed under IPR's leadership, is a global effort to reach agreement on what and how we should measure, with adoption by major buyers of research services to give it teeth. So that's the first kind, research in public relations. The second kind, research on public relations, is often called benchmarking and best practices. It's knowing what others are doing in any given situation will never tell you what's right for your organization or client, but it certainly can help you make informed decisions. Trade media, professional associations, consulting organizations are often good sources of benchmarking and best practices. They produce studies on trends in practice, such as the value of massive data stores, the focus on employees as reputation builders, how public relations departments are structured and funded, and even how much public relations people are paid. But it's that third kind of research for public relations that's the hardest. That's the underlying social science, and it's often knowledge that you carry around in your head, and even when it's not front of mind, it affects every aspect of your work. Now, this kind of research can seem highly theoretical. It may come from various fields of study, such as psychology, sociology, economics, health, and political science, but there actually exists a large body of social science specific to public relations and corporate communications. At its core, our social science addresses how individuals, organizations, and societies form opinions, make decisions, and take action. Good example, most scholars acknowledge that it takes years to build deep trust in another person or organization. Yet, on social media, we seem to decide very quickly whose opinions we trust, and we may change our behavior because of that. Now, has the human mind evolved that much since the advent of social media? Or is it really a case that there are other factors at play and we just need to figure them out? In any case, the more you think you are qualified to lead this function, the more you need three kinds of research. I wish I had known that at the beginning of my career the way I know it today. And so, lesson 3. If you fancy yourself a leader in this area or any area, try this sometime. Calculate how much time you spend rushing to do stuff that you imagine is important to somebody versus how much time you spend thinking about what you and your organization need to do next and how to do that. That someone you're trying to impress most likely has some control, maybe a lot of control over your career success. Worst case, maybe it's not even someone you respect. But if you're not thinking about the future and getting your organization ready for what's ahead, how long will short-term stuff impress anybody? Yes, the speed of change and the things you're expected to know, which have been talked about a lot in this conference, make the job harder and harder. But maybe you're not the first to go through this, and maybe you can draw from others. A little reminiscence. I went back, checked dates. The World Future Society was formed 3 years before I started my career in public relations. Now, futurism, futurology, and futurists were not new terms then, but they weren't common either. For some reason, and I can't say why, the theme of constant change and accelerating change appealed to me. Perhaps because I was working in technology and issues-oriented businesses where you could see change all around you. Well, when you're young and trying to make your mark, it's easy to think you're the first on your block or in your department to recognize and experience all this. Later on, you start to realize that people who were already giants when you arrived went through quite a lot of change themselves, maybe even deeper change than you are. So it's really not about you and social media or any technology or socially driven change. It's about you, progress, and judgment. What will be important in the long run and what won't. So to recap, One, there's always work you can do on the farm. Two, research is a big, big word. And three, how much time do you spend thinking about what you and your organization must do next? I suggested a moment ago that sometime there can be a problem with a person who has control of your career and is telling you how good or good you are or aren't. I've been blessed with incredible bosses, some of them page members, over the years. If you have ever served on the IPR board, trust me, you're in that category of an incredible boss. But it hasn't always worked out that way, and I'll never forget the day I made a deliberate decision to never again base my self-assessment on the opinions of someone else just because of a hierarchy. Within a few years, I reached another turning point when I decided I would never make another career move based on money. Those two decisions freed me to think about opportunities to serve, especially the profession that has given me so much. So I have to tell you, those experiences were the cake. Tonight's award is icing, and it is sweet. My thanks to the Page Society, to the Honors Committee, and to all of you. Thank you.